Spartan Nation. This is Miss Childress and Mr. Dane, and we're here in our temporary makerspace. And we're here to show you how to use our CNC milling machine, and we're going to be making a yo-yo. Mr. Dane is going to explain more about the process.
Yep, so to get started, what we want to do is we're going to be measuring our piece, and then we're going to be positioning it in the mill before we go to software. So to position your piece in the mill, you're going to position it between these two devices. So now what we're going to do is get our material ready before we jump into software. So we're going to use this block mostly because it already kind of resembles what the thickness of like a yo-yo might be. So that's very important when we are deciding what piece of stock to use in regards to what it is we want to make. So to position this, what I want to do is I'm going to line it up on the left side and turn here to clamp down. And what we're doing is we're positioning it in the middle. Okay, and once that's tight, I can slide this one over. Clamp down here as well. Get this nice and tight, get this nice and tight towards you. And we are ready to go. We already have 4 bits in our automatic tool changer.
What's bits?
So this machine is going to analyze this based on what we're making, and we'll make recommendations on what size bit to use based on the process. So we have a 1/4 inch square and a 1/4 inch ball bit, and then we also have a 1/8 inch square and an 1/8 inch ball. So for something like this, it might use, let's say, the 1/4 inch to do the roughing and take off a lot of the material that we don't need. And then it might go grab, let's say, the 1/8 inch bit to do more of the fine detail, like where the yo-yo is actually going to say yo on it. So like it's going to use a smaller bit to do that, for example.
And a bit is like a drill in a way, or is it?
The bit is the tool. So like if you have an electric drill, you have a motor that's just spinning, right? And you put a bit in there, it allows you to, based on the shape and the diameter, perform a certain subtractive process.
All right.
Okay, so I took actually my piece back out because I want to do an exact measurement and also mark my middle point to get it perfectly squared up in middle on the vise. So if I measure this, it is exactly 6 by 4 by 1. So because it goes in long ways in the vise, I'm going to measure my shorter side here, which is 4 inches. I'm just going to make a mark right on the 2-inch line. Then what I can do is, right here in the middle of the vise, there's an indentation, and I can line up the mark I made with that indentation. Just right there. Tighten down. On both sides. This is nice and tight, and now we are loaded up and ready to go to software. Alright, so now what we're doing is going to the software for this machine. So we need to open 2 pieces of software. The first is called vPanel, and this is basically just a software interface that takes the place of using the front of the machine. Kind of does the same thing, but we use it for some certain things like calibration. We also need to open up what's called SRP player. And this is kind of like the software, kind of like for the 3D printer in a sense. Okay. When you open this, you want to make sure this machine is on, and then hit next. It's going to look for the machine, and it'll list it. You click on it, hit next. It just confirms. You hit next. Select which method of measurement you want to use. I'm going to go to inches and hit next. When you get to this screen, this list on the left is basically every size and type of drill bit that's compatible with the machine. All you want to do on this list is check the ones that you are going to be using in the machine. So already we have the 1/4 and 1/8 inch ball and the 1/4 and 1/8 inch square already selected, and that's what's in the machine, so we're already good to go. We can just hit next and then finish. Okay, and so now what you can see we have here is basically a virtual representation of the inside and axes of our machine. So the red line is our is basically like our A-axis, the rotation. And then we have your other axes. It's also, there's a legend right here. So actually the X is your red line going all the way across, left and right. Your green line is your Y going front and back, and then the blue line is your Z going up and down.
Okay.
You can't really see the A axis, but just know that's the rotation. So the first thing you want to do, and something that's really nice about this software, is it actually walks us through the steps of this process on the right side. So the first, number one step, model size and orientation, we're just going to be bringing in what model we're going to make, and then telling it what size we want the finished product to be, and then orienting it on the axis the way we want, and then we're done with step one. So let's do step one. We're going to click open, and we're going to go grab the download that I grabbed, which was the yo-yo, and hit open.
And it doesn't take long to import.
So by default, when you bring in the model, it's going to be whatever size it was designed as. But what we can do is we can change it to make it the size we want. If you keep this checkbox checked for keep XYZ ratio, if you change any of these, it will change the other ones proportionally. So I would say, since we have a 6-inch piece going long ways, I would say we want to make our model maybe roughly half of that. I'm just going to say, let's say 3.5.
Okay.
Okay. This is already the way I want it oriented, because if you look at the way it's displayed here compared to my model, I have the longest part going along the X, which is the way the piece of stock is. So this is exactly the way I want it.
Okay.
So from here, I can now come down to type of milling, which is the next step. And in type of milling, we're going to basically answer a couple questions about our model. So like, for example, the first one says, do we want a better surface finish or do we want a faster cutting time? With something that has a lot of rounded edges, I think better surface finish is ideal. Next, it asks us, does it have a lot of flat planes or a lot of curved surfaces? On this model, given it's a yo-yo, it's curved. We're going to select curved surfaces. And then it's going to ask us about our piece of stock. Is the stock cylindrical or is it a block? We're using a block, so we're going to click that. And then it asks us if we want to cut just the top of it or if we're doing the top and the bottom. Now on the yo-yo, we have to have, it's going to want to make a small hole on the bottom so that you can actually put them together.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to do top and bottom. So we're going to click top and bottom. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to add supports to the model. Now the reason we do this is because if you look at our block, it's going to cut these two pieces, the top and bottom of the yo-yo out of the middle of the block. Now if we don't use supports, once it gets to a certain point, if it goes all the way around, it's just going to cut and fall through. So we have to have supports just basically to leave a little bit of wood or a piece of our stock so that it doesn't just fall through. The checkbox to add supports to the model. And then what we're going to do is we're going to modify these supports. So we hit the checkbox and then hit edit. And that's going to bring us to the screen. And what we're going to do here is we're going to move, click and drag to move the support structures to the very edge of our model. And then for the Y support structures, we can drag these to the edge of one of each of these. Okay, and then once we have it where we want, like this, what we're going to want to do is look at the other perspectives and make sure that, first off, like this support is almost a little bit thicker than my model, so I'm going to go to support height and decrease it a little bit. And so now you can see it's much skinnier, and I'm going to place it on the basically the flattest surface I can, and bring it all the way to the edge on both sides. Checking my other perspectives, making sure that I'm just, again, all the way on the edges, and that my supports are on the flattest surface. Okay, I'm happy with that. I can also do a little bit, I can also decrease the support width a tiny bit just to make them more square. And then I can hit apply and close. And so you can see now I have my model with my support structures that will attach to my edges of my stock. So now what I need to do is go to Create Toolpath. And it's going to ask me, first off, what type of material I'm using. So this is called MDF, the stock, which is most similar to soft chemical wood. So that's what I'm going to choose here. And then it wants me to put in the size of my piece. So if you remember from the beginning, we measured 6 by 4 by 1. Now, one thing that's really nice about this is right here next to it, it says 5.8 whatever. That's telling you that your stock needs to at least be bigger than this in order to actually properly work. Yeah, exactly. So now you can see we have this piece represents our stock. This model represents what's going to be left inside of it. The red you see is where the vise grabs onto the edge. That's where that red is in this picture. Okay. And the green is everything that will be removed, for the most part. Okay. It's only going to actually probably cut off to about here, because it doesn't need to remove all of that. And also the supports have to have somewhere to attach to. So the next thing we'll do is we'll come here and hit Create Toolpath. And what this is going to do is make recommendations on how to cut this based on what bits we told it had available. Okay. So we told it that it had access to a 1/4 inch square, a 1/4 inch ball, an 1/8 inch square, and an 1/8 inch ball. So based on the 4 that we said are available, it's going to suggest what to do and when. So right now it's saying that it can use an 1/8 inch ball to do this entire project, which is nice. If you really wanted to, we could actually go into edit, and I could say, like on roughing 1, instead of using the 1/4 inch ball, use the 1/8 inch ball, use the 1/4 inch ball, and hit apply. So what this will do is it will use a larger bit for the roughing, which will get our time to go down. Because if you're using a smaller bit just to like take away a bunch of stuff you don't want, it's going to spend a lot of time. Okay. So on the roughing, on the same thing here, I'm going to go to edit. On roughing 2, I'm going to tell it to use the 1/4 inch ball instead. Okay, I'm close. Alright, so if I'm happy with that, I hit Create Toolpath again to basically save my changes, and then I can go to Preview Results, and then from here it's going to tell me how long it's going to take. So it's going to take about 2.5 hours, and if I want, I can hit Preview Cutting, and it's actually going to create a graphic of what it's going to look like. Now this is a good tool to use because if you used a bit that was either too big or too small for a certain part of the job, it's not going to tell you can't do it, but if you go to the preview, it'll show you what it's going to look like. So this is what eventually it'll look like when it's done, top and bottom. And so when this is done, what we'll do is you'll lift the lid and we'll take out this piece, and then we'll just use like maybe a little miniature saw or something just to cut these little ends off, and then we can put our yo-yo together with some string and a screw. So then when we're done, or we're ready, we'll just come here. You'll go to, first off, you'll go to Configure Magazine before we can cut, and we're going to tell it where our bits are in our automatic tool changer. So in slot 1, I know that I have a 1/4 inch square. In slot 2, I have a 1/4 inch ball. In slot 3, I have an 1/8 inch square, and in slot 4, I have an 1/8 inch ball. So hit OK. And once I hit OK, I can hit Start Cutting, and it'll send the job over, and it'll get to work.
And now, Spartans, we have now completed a yo-yo using the CNC milling machine. I am Ms. Childress.
And I'm Mr. Dane.
And we'll see you next time on the Makerspace.